Good afternoon. My name is Bashir Fancy. I'm President CEO at Business and Technology Professional Association of Canada, BIZTEK. On my left on the screen is Nick Brown, who's also a payment guru. And what we're going to do today is first for us is what we're calling the BIZTEK Bytes, which means we're going to bring to you in small chunks so you don't have to spend one hour to listen to it, but in short chunks so we can take each issue and deal with it. So today, welcome, Nick. And I'm glad you're part of this first bite that we're doing, which we have learned from Rumi. So the question, Nick, that you can answer, which would really be helpful, is Nick had posted today that Pakistan have issued a financial payment gateway, which is based on Mojaloop. And some questions were asked, and we thought, who better than Nick, who has studied this issue very well about Mojaloop and all that, to answer that question. So my question would be, Mojaloop, on which the Pakistani payment system has been built, and which is full marks for them, congratulations to them to do that. However, you looked at this system a couple of years back, and you were not ready to touch it because you were worried about security.
Yes, that's right.
So can you speak to that? And now you had a different view on it, but not because you're saying they become secure, but because you had a solution you developed. Can you speak to that and how we could use that, or what is the thing everybody needs to worry about this?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I've been a technical guy in this industry for a very long time, and been working on payment switches and interfaces. And when I first ran across Mojaloop, they were basically developing an interface, which is what you build into your system in order to communicate with other systems. And so generally what you'd have is you'd have two systems that both have a Mojaloop interface talking with each other. And they did a pretty good job. I have to admit, I was quite surprised. They'd run across some of the problems and they'd figured out ways of solving them. They'd done a pretty good job with the interface. There are still things they hadn't run across, but they were doing really well. There was one real problem though, and that is that they decided to make the Mojaloop code open source. And that is not a good thing in this industry, in the payment industry, in the rails of the payment industry. It is not good to be open source. And the reason for that is that it's all about payment fraud. That's the name of the game when you get to a payment network. There are really smart people and professional organizations, criminal organizations out there that have been breaking these systems here in the West for 40, 50, 60 years. They're really good at breaking them. And what are you doing with open source? You're giving them the code. It's like you're asking for trouble here. Not only that, they can introduce their own changes into it, which have little holes that they can then exploit. It is not a good pathway. And so I rejected Mojaloop a couple of years ago to use Mojaloop, and I told them why, and I even suggested some things that they could do to actually fix it. And I wasn't getting very far, so like, that's fine, they'll figure it out. A couple of years later, so now I'm changing my mind on it, and the reason for that is that Mojaloop is starting to be adopted. And so you're getting companies like mobile money companies that are starting to use Mojaloop and connecting to a payment switch. By the way, the Mojaloop payment switch, the payment hub they call it, that's not good. If the interface is on the edges of the minefield, the payment switch itself is the minefield. They have no clue what they're doing with that. They have no idea what they've walked into. I like to describe it as 5% of the work is when everything works. 15% is when things just happen to cause things not to work. The other 80% is when people are trying to break it. That's how much work you have to put into these systems in order to actually have a fairly safe running system. So what I looked at was if you have mobile money, mobile wallets that are utilizing Mojaloop, currently, and then you have a better system that comes along, like the system that I'm building. If we use Mojaloop, we can actually implement our own changes on top of the standard Mojaloop code that adds massive layers of security on it to make it safe. And we can decide what's in it because it'll be our version of the Mojaloop code. But the main benefit is that all these other companies that are already familiar with Mojaloop, they don't have to learn a new interface. There's 5% that's going to be different, and they can learn that. And in the process of learning that, they see how we have changed it. And so they will learn, why have we made these changes? So that's really the reason why. And I made that decision actually while I was talking with some people that were working on Mojaloop, which is a payment switch that is between MTN and Orange. And I thought, these guys are learning things. They're new to this industry. They're learning it. Let's not throw that experience away. We can use that experience. So that's why I changed my mind on it.
So Nick, I think that's fabulous in a short thing you described well. So if I understood, I'm just going to recap what I think I heard. Mojaloop, which is actually from Gates Foundation, they built an open source software to allow this type of payments to work.
Yes.
That is what is being adopted. You developed a tool software on top of it, which has got all the security so that the weaknesses that they have don't show up, because at the end of the day, it's going through the layer you built, which we know is missing because you've reviewed it in detail.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, it's a little bit more complex than that, but basically, yes.
Simplified kind of thing.
Yes, there's security in there that is sufficient for the Mojaloop interface to communicate to the clear purchase payment switch. However, some of it can be applicable to connect to anyone. Some of it is specific for us. Some of it can be connected and just be added on to any Mojaloop interface to add security on it.
So the organization, they may be using the freeware and building their thing. If they really thought through and spent that time on security, no problem.
Yeah.
But we know that there is a compromise going on out there in the world. For ease of use and convenience, we know security gets sacrificed every single time. We see that all the time, right? That's the problem you tackle, and I think so people can reach out.
This is an industry I've been a technical guy in for over 30 years, and for a lot of countries, they may not necessarily realize how important security is when you go from a closed system to a network. That's a world I'm very familiar with, and they can get really good people working on it, and they could have done an extremely good job. The thing is, I'm not going to know unless I have a look at it.
So effectively, the judgment to bring this byte, which is fantastic, in short, we've got some points across, is that if you're going to use an open software like this, so open source software for your payments, you better have spent a hell of a lot of time, money, and effort to secure it, or the problems that you will face afterwards could be quite massive. And we're not talking about, because we know that I've said 1,000 times, that every Tom, Dick, and Harry thinks he's now a security expert, rather than, and that's as a problem. We both know that we've both come from that background. Visa, we have seen plenty of fraud as you have, and I think this is fantastic, Nick. I really appreciate it, because you laid out that there are some serious security concerns to be taken into account, and of course you can reach out to either Nick or me, and Nick can take a harder look for you and maybe provide solutions, whatever. But Nick is part of the history making here. This is the first byte we're doing, and we've learned, as I said, from Rumi, who've been doing this very successfully. You can go look at their bytes too, Rumi, RUMIE.org. And now we're gonna, when we have it on our website too, Rumi, once now we are building this type of thing to address. And Nick, we're gonna address a lot more different things as we move forward. So thank you very much for doing this. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.